So in this video, we're going to talk about volume of prisms and how we find that volume. The first prism we're going to start off with is the rectangular prism. And I'm going to start off here. This is actually number 1 from your homework. So I'm actually going to be working these problems. You do still have to work them even though I'm doing them. I need to see your work. So I'm going to start off by actually drawing in my inches. See, over here I've got 4 inches along this side here. My length here is 10, and my height of my prism is going to be 3. Now you don't have to do this, but I just want to make it apparent what's going on here. So I'm going to start off by, this is 4 inches long over here, so I'm just going to cut it into 4. This is 10 inches long here, so that means that there would be 10 sets. And then I'll extend these lines here. Once again, you don't have to do this. I'm just going to do it for the first one so that you can see what I mean. And actually, I'm going to pause this while I get the rest of it drawn in. So this allows us to visualize what's going on in the cube. And remember that we talked about in class that volume is the number of cubes that can fit into a prism. So here, if I'm looking, and I'm going to grab a highlighter really quick. If I'm looking here, and I'm just going to observe one row. So I just want to look at this top row here. And if I want to figure out how many cubes are in here on just this top row, well, I would have, this is 4 going this way, and it's 10 going this way. So I would have a total of 40 cubes if I'm just looking at the top row. But because I'm not looking at the top row, I have to look at the entire prism. If I look, I've got 40 cubes in each row, and I've got 1, 2, 3 rows of them. So when I'm calculating the volume, if I find the area of the base up here, if I find the area of the base, and then I multiply it by the number of rows, it'll tell me how many total cubes I have. So that gives us our formula for volume. Oop, that's not what I want. For volume, which is going to be equal to the area of the base times the height of the base. And the height of the base is always going to be the length that is connecting the two bases. And for the rectangular prism, that's pretty easy because all of them are rectangles. But this will make more sense when I get to my other 2 shapes. All right, so here we go. So I'm going to put the area of the base in parentheses so that I don't get it confused. So my area of the base is going to be length times width, and then I'm going to multiply that times my height. So the volume is going to be, my length is going to be 4, because it's 4 units long here. And my width is going to be 10 here. So it's 10 units long. 10 inches long. And then the height connecting the 2 bases is going to be 3 inches. That's how many layers or how many rows I'm going to have. So I'm going to have 3. So the volume is going to be equal to 4 times 10 is 40 times 3 is going to be 120 inches cubed, not squared. Remember that we're measuring it in cubes now. So, and that's basically the basic idea. In the next figures, I'm not going to draw in the cubes because they become more difficult. But as long as you understand that the area of the base is going to give us how many square units are in the base, then we can just multiply that by how many layers there are to give us our volume. Okay, so now let's try another figure. So this is a trapezoidal prism. Now, it's important to think about the names when you're looking at the volume because you have to figure out what the base. And the prism is always named by what it is. So the fact that I'm looking at a trapezoidal prism tells me that I have to find the area of the trapezoid. So I'm going to write my formula like this. The volume is equal to the area, and I'm going to put a little b down here just to tell me the area of the base, times the height. I'm going to use a big H so I don't get confused. So the volume is going to be equal to, this is a trapezoidal prism, so I'm going to look for what's the area of a trapezoid. Well, I know that that's B1 plus B2 divided by 2 times the height, little h, so that I know I'm just working on the 2D shape, times the height of my figure. Okay, so now let's identify those different parts. So the first thing I've got to find is, oh, I left out, this needs to be 5. And once again, this is number 5 on your homework. So let's look over here. So the first thing I've got to identify is my 2 bases. So here's 1. So my first base of my trapezoid is 13. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to color in my base. I'm just so that it's easy for me to remember what I'm looking at. My eyes don't get distracted by the different aspects of the prism. I'm just going to color it in, and you can choose to do that. You don't have to do that. All right, so I am looking for my 2 bases. So here's one base, which is 13, and here's my other base that's 5. So I'm going to say the volume is equal to 13 plus 5 divided by 2 times my height. So my height of my trapezoid, remember it's the line that is perpendicular to the 2 bases, so that's going to be 7 feet, times the height of the prism. Okay, this is what I was talking about, where when you're looking at the height of the prism, you want the length between the 2 bases. So here's one base here, and my second base is back here, and I want to know what is the distance. Should I use a different color? What is the distance between these 2 bases? Well, that's going to be this number here. This is going to be 3, meaning that this is, if I were to draw this in, this would be 3, oh, I'm in pen. This would be 3 units here. So whatever area is in the front of this, there's going to be that number times 3 layers. So times 3. So the volume is going to be equal to 13 times 5. Let's just do this. 13 times 5 is 18. So the volume is going to be 18 divided by 2 is going to be 9 times 7 times 3. Sorry, I keep on changing up my multiplication sign. I apologize for that. Okay, so let's see. 9 times 7 is going to give me 63 times 3 will give me 189. And of course, feet cubed. Don't forget your units. Okay, so that's my trapezoidal prism. All right, the last one I'm going to do is going to be the triangular prism. And it's somewhere around here. There we go. Okay, once again, we're going to go a little bit faster on this one. So I'm looking for the volume is going to be equal to the area of the base times the height. Volume is going to be equal to, this is a triangular prism. So I'm going to be looking for my triangle. And the reason why I chose number 9 instead of doing one of the equilateral triangles is because we often get confused here. But remember, because we're dealing with a right triangle, remember that the height of a right triangle is actually one of the legs. So this little sign over here, this right angle symbol, connects the base and the height always. Okay, so the area of the base is going to be, get a different color pen, is going to be the base times little h height divided by 2, and then I'm going to multiply that times the height of the prism. So the volume is going to be 6 times 6 divided by 2 times the height of my prism. Okay, so once again, I'm going to do a little bit of coloring here. My base here and here. So here are my two bases, and I want to know how many layers of blocks am I going to have between those two bases, and that answer is going to be 12. So I'll multiply that times 12. So volume is equal to 6 times 6 is 36. 36 divided by 2 is going to be 18 times 12. And then if I come down here, that means that my volume is going to be equal to 216 yards cubed. Okay, so that's pretty much all there is to it. You need to finish the other problems that I have on that worksheet. There's not too many, and then we'll continue doing this. If you're struggling a little bit with it, it's okay, because we're going to be continuing next class, finishing up this idea of volume.